One of the most important things that we could do right now is providing opportunities for our students after school and in the summer as learning opportunities. We know that children are being asked to learn more and more demands are placed on schools. Our summer programs and after-school programs help meet that need by having school day extended but not look like the regular school day. With me today are three folks who are very intimately involved with after-school programs, and that is Emanuel Betz, who works for the Department of Education and runs our after-school programs, Holly Morehouse from the Vermont Center for Afterschool Excellence, and Ginny Burley, the Director of the Community Connections here in Central Vermont. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to talk a little bit about what you do and your visions and how you help support after-school and summer learning opportunities. Emanuel, can we start with you?
Yeah, that'd be great. And thanks for having me. It's a great opportunity to talk about after-school and summer. And it's really, I just get really excited about it because there's really programs that can happen in out-of-school time. So it's not just summer, but it's after school. It can be before school. It can be during vacation times. It can be online in sort of an asynchronous manner. So there's just all sorts of opportunity, and that's what I'm really excited about. So the work that I do with the Agency of Education, we have federal funds that support innovative learning programs that happen during the after-school hours. They happen before school. They happen during the summertime. They're in higher poverty communities. They're in more than 120 sites. 15,000 kids are doing them. These have been around for 10 years.
Vermont?
In Vermont. Yeah, so they're really, my wife says it's the best kept secret in Vermont, actually. And in a lot of ways that's true because these programs are all over the place, in small towns, in the larger towns. And what they're doing is basically putting schools and community educators together for kids during these extended hours. So we're doing really great learning programs for kids. It can be anything. It can be taekwondo, so movement programs, woodworking programs, tutoring, media programs, video production, running, project-based learning, science experiments, and this is K-12 across the spectrum, so it'll be appropriate for the age. We'll be using in these programs teachers who are passionate about the topic, whether it be a math teacher who does line dancing or a science teacher who does 4 months of project-based science. So there's really a lot of flexibility. And we'll also be using lots of community providers and professionals. So artists from the community can come in, which is really great, and share their knowledge and expertise with kids. And the beauty of it is the time factor. So one can design programs that engage kids in new ways and lots of different ways for what, be it 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, a huge block of time in the summer where kids can really sink their teeth into fun and engaging and high quality programs that really promote learning and promote passion. It's just so, when you go to the programs, you just can't help but kind of jump for joy, really, because they're just so exciting to see kids that are engaged and getting kids engaged in new ways that maybe they're getting these opportunities that they might not get anywhere else. So there's lots of different kinds of these after-school programs. The programs that I manage follows, it's called the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program. So often when the president talks about after-school and dollars for that's what he's talking about. Okay. And so those dollars are directly put to needy communities. And again, the partners from the community and the school work together. They're usually centered in the school building using all those resources because they're there. Light, heat, electricity, computer labs, iPads. Let's use that stuff. Right. It's right there. Years ago, the buildings were empty. Right. Now, if you haven't been in a school building for a long time, you go to any of these buildings after school, it's full of kids. It's full of community people doing stuff. The libraries are being used. The teachers are there. I don't know how they do it because they do such great work in terms of working all day and then doing this more stuff after school. So all those resources are being used. So the dollars are targeted into these communities and using community providers, using the school-based staff in the school buildings. And then you create education, create programs, use innovation and ideas and partner together. And so statewide, we're talking again, 15,000 kids. over 120 schools doing this. And in terms of cost, it's really cost effective. It's, at this point, the projects are using 50% of the federal dollars and now 50% local. So there's about $11 million going into the programs. And when you see what the kids are getting, it's just fabulous. So I'm really excited to be part of that work.
So the 21C is provides almost $6 million in federal money that, as a pass-through that goes to the districts.
Yeah, roughly. It's roughly on
communities.
average about $5.5 million.
Okay.
And so it's really the local folks. There are fees, but there are also lots of innovative ways that folks partner together to get other funds, and they really are doing a great job doing that. So people, it's really kind of, I think I got into it because it's really, I see this as entrepreneurship and education. It's a place where you can create, you really have a lot of flexibility, you have high standards, but you're really free to do incredible learning programs across the spectrum. So it's really a great place to kind of dream and kind of create. I think of these things as schools within schools. That's sort of when these start out. I say to the folks who are going to be leading them, if you had to create the perfect environment for kids during these after school and summer hours, what would you do and how would you do it? And then they do that. So it's really great. And I know people in the communities who have these programs know it is the best kept secret.
And Holly, I mean, we've known each other for a long time, and again, and with a lot of experience around after school. Tell us about your role and how you are involved and support communities in doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I started as a 21st Century Community
I was
Learning
going to
Center
say that.
director,
I didn't want to,
a while ago, back
Yes.
in Winooski, and then was at the department for
Yes.
a while in that statewide position. And now I have the privilege to be at the Vermont Center for Afterschool Excellence. And I'm so excited about this area of work and so passionate about it because when you look at across a school year, a child spends about 1,000 hours in the school day in the classroom, and then it's another 5,000 hours outside the classroom in their community with their families, hanging with their friends, and for to build their skills or to hit some struggles. So those 5,000 hours is really what we're focused on, and our role at the center is to support programs and how best to capture those hours and use that time. We see after-school programs playing 3 really important roles, and Emanuel has touched on a number of those. And one is supporting the learning. And we know that schools can't do it alone. And like you said, there is so much learning that has to happen during that school day. So how can we use the hours outside the school day and the weekends and the summer to take it further? And not only take it further, but to do it differently. And after school, you have the privilege of bigger chunks of time. You can take the kids off site, you can bring the community into the program, you have smaller groups often to work with, you can do a lot of hands-on project-based learning. So we really want to emphasize that and support programs and building that in, and in an intentional way. Secondly, programs provide supports for working families and places for kids to be when parents and guardians are at work
That's a good point.
in those hours. We know Emanuel talked about the kids in the 21st century community learning programs. There's about 21 sites. After school programs in total in the state, we have close to 368. So there's the 21st century community learning sites. There are also licensed after school programs. There are teen centers, there's boys and girls clubs, there's YMCAs. And all of them are not only providing the academic supports, but also providing those supports for working families so that, my own child, so I can be at work, I know that he's engaged and furthering his learning and his own growth. And then the third is that positive youth development. There's so much more to a child than just their reading and math. Reading and math is so important, but it is about their social skills and their peer relationships and the youth engagement and youth voice. And at the center, we have a very intentional model that is adopted in the state around youth program quality that looks at moving programs towards youth voice and youth engagement. Because research has shown that when you support kids in that way, you get not only the positive social development, but you get the academic growth. And you get the social relations, and you get them ready for college and career readiness. So our role really is to provide that professional development, that training, that support for intentionality. We do research and evaluation so that we have the data and the information as a community to move our programs forward. The after-school community is a very vibrant, exciting place to be and work, and the folks working in those programs are always looking for the best practices and ways to engage kids. Often kids are there voluntarily, so that program better be good or they will walk with their feet, you know. So we try to help them in that as well.
Great. And I want to come back to a couple of things that you both mentioned afterwards, but thank you. So, and Ginny, you're here from a local perspective, right? Here from the Montpelier, Washington, Central Vermont area.
I'll be the grassroots
You'll
boy.
be the grassroots. With the experience of both, and I'm going to call it Montpelier urban, and we sort of laughed about this earlier, and rural, because you do have both perspectives.
Since 2001, we've been doing the after-school programs in Montpelier and the U32 towns. So that includes Doty School, which has between 60 and 70 kids out in Worcester. U32 has 800. So there's a wide variety.
Wow.
We do pre-K through high school.
I want to talk about the high school later on.
We'll talk about the high school, but I also wanted to mention the pre-K, because when pre-K became implemented in the schools, we found a lot of families that couldn't access it unless there were an after pre-K program, because they couldn't run over to the school at 11:30 or 12 and get their kids. So in several of our schools, we implemented after pre-K, which goes until a bus can take the kids home or somewhere else.
At 3 o'clock or
at 3 o'clock or at 5 o'clock, depending on what the needs of the community are.
Okay.
We always work really locally to figure out what the local needs are. So pre-K through 12, we're operating in 8 different schools. And we like to say that we're in session every day that school is in session and almost every day that school is not in session. Next week, for instance, when there's April vacation, we have full day camps every day. We actually even slipped into Sunday because one of our high schools is going to take a bunch of kids down to a Red Sox game. And they're still going.
That's great.
So, yeah, we do try and, one of our goals is to broaden the knowledge of kids and get them outside of their comfort zone. We have kids who live in our rural communities who, until they did it with us, never climbed a mountain and came down and said, "That was awesome, I'm going to do that more often." Good, we like that. We sometimes do day in Burlington because some of our kids haven't even been to Burlington. Day in Boston is just mind-boggling for them. So anything we can do to sort of broaden their experience, we're trying to work on that. I came to this from a prevention standpoint, so I do still bring that perspective about wellness and health, healthy living into the work, along with the academics. So we're looking at all of that. We're looking at positive youth development. We support the academic achievement. We try to have a variety of things because, as Holly said, most of our kids are there voluntarily. Even if it's semi-voluntarily, their parents need childcare, they have to be there every day. We always offer them a choice. Hopefully one or another of the things that we can offer is going to be something that they would choose to do anyway. I was a stay-at-home mom for 14 years when my kids were little, and when we started this up, my goal was to say, I want this to be a program that the people who need it are going to love, and the people who don't need it are going to want to come anyway. And that's been kind of the vision that we've maintained throughout the years we've been doing this.
Now, Ginny, one of the things that, as we were talking earlier, one of the maybe misconceptions is that a small rural school, for example, would be too small to have one. You mentioned Worcester, and you also have some other small communities. So that is not the case then?
It's not the case, no. Those programs are just as viable. We may not be able to have 3 choices a day. We may only have 1 or 2. But still, the enrollment is good, and we're enrolling more than half the kids in our schools.
Wow.
And I think at Worcester, it's something like 80 to 90% a year come to something.
And then the other misconception, and this is a misconception that I had, was about secondary schools. I just assumed, with my experience, that it was K through 8, let's say. But you just shared with me that that's not the case.
No, we've had the high schools, the 2 high schools, Montpelier High School and U32, since the beginning, since 2001. Funding them has been a challenge because we don't have access to child care funds. Those cut off at the age of 12. So upper, middle, and high school are not eligible for those funds. So it has been more of a challenge to fund it, but it's an exciting area for youth development work. And we've been taking an approach of experiential education that really supplements classroom work, and our our staff at the high schools have actually been doing more and more team teaching with science and social studies and English teachers to bring their experiential education background into the classroom, because what that really has going for it is engagement of youth. And you know, if the kids are excited about the learning and what they're learning and how they're learning, and if it's very hands-on, that's a positive thing for everybody.
Right. One of the things that I think all of you have touched upon, and I think Ginny just now about that engagement, particularly with our secondary school students who quite often may feel less connected to school because they don't see the connection between what they're learning in school and what they may be doing in the future, which is part of our Flexible Pathways Bill, which is currently working its way through the legislature. So that, I think what you described is definitely one of those areas that is beneficial. Emanuel, you mentioned earlier project-based learning, which Ginny just talked about that as well. Tell me how that connects with what the direction that we're looking at to go as a state and as a country with high school kids being more engaged in their learning.
Yeah, and I'm going to go down a few grades, but I think it applies because...
Sure, you got the mic.
That's great. There was this a real exciting program I'd like to talk about just briefly that gives kind of a sense of the kinds of programming that can happen. And this program is a fantastic science program in one of our schools, where the science teacher worked for 4 months with teams of students. And what they did, essentially, was the kids as a group would create, they'd have teams of four kids. They were 6th and 7th graders. And when I went and saw this program, they were literally jumping out of their skin with excitement for science, which it was just
great.
Amazing to see and fabulous to see. They were showing me the experiments they were doing and took me through the whole process of this project. And what it really was a soup to nuts scientific inquiry process where the team would go from a question, a community problem. So in this one example, this one team wanted to solve the milfoil problem in Lake Maury. And so they were going to solve that problem and look into what the issues were scientifically and figure out, that was their sort of problem statement. And these are 6th graders. And they figured this out as a team. They developed a plan. The first thing they had to do was get the milfoil. Well, they couldn't take it out legally, so they had to write to the state to get a permit. So the science teacher helped the students compose the letter. The students did all the work. They called the state government people like ourselves on the phone, figuring out what the rules and regulations were. So this is real world problem solving. They did get the permit. The next part of the project that they put together, and mind you, this is happening 2 times a week after class, and they were working on Saturdays as well. So you've got just a project that sort of is jumping with energy. There were 4 different teams. Each of these teams had their own problem. But to get back to the milfoil one, so the students then devised an experiment. They took out the milfoil and looked at, they had to keep 3 aquariums at different temperatures because they were looking at the growth patterns. And they would track their data. They would have team meetings together with agendas and outcomes, so all these real world skills around communication and collaboration, working together in a team around problem solving. So they did their experiment, they looked at the data, they did a lot of different work, and at the end a really neat thing was a presentation of their findings to the community. And so there were the community came to the gym, they gave professional presentations, they put out their scientific data, et cetera, and with lots of questions and answers for that. So these are the kinds of things that sprout up where the teachers really are not teaching but really are facilitating a process that has a strong structure underneath it. And I would add that particular program had a technology component as well, where they do a lot of research on their topic. So they're using technology, inputting their data, and it's really a wonderful kind of project. And that's the neat thing during these hours where you have the time, the creativity to do it after school, but hey, the teacher will take a Saturday and the kids and the families work it out. They'll do it for Saturdays. Right. You know, they were spending 8 hours together on these Saturdays doing this work. And they're just running with their learning, you know. And I left that program just literally thinking, you know, these students are the future leaders, and they're learning the skills to be the leaders, you know. Just fabulous stuff.
And it's engaging to their work because it's relevant, like you were saying.
They're doing what they want to do.
Right.
You know, the other
relevant
team,
to the community.
Yeah, the other team was looking at wind. I'm forgetting what the other ones were, but you know, and it's not like it was all roses. You know, they're working in a team. This was what was neat. Like, they had to struggle through team dynamics of arguing together about, well, what's your role going to be, and how are we going to figure this thing out. So it was real world stuff that
All
you know.
those 21st century skills that
Yeah.
they don't even know
Completely.
they're learning.
That's right.
And,
That's
and,
right.
you know, the programs that have a sequence to it, that have active learning in them, that have a focus to it, like this project, that are explicit in what they want to do. Those are really quality indicators that we're working towards in the programs, and this one program is a good example
It's
of
a
that.
model of it, yeah.
Yeah, just fabulous stuff.
So Holly, this is, I mean, one of the things that, you know, you're more at that sort of getting the programs in those communities really growing.
Yeah.
Challenges, and I'm sure that you could list, but are there both physical challenges as well as sort of attitudinal challenges when we look at trying to implement after-school programs?
They are, and the flip side of challenge, right, is opportunity.
Is opportunity, yes.
Right,
Okay, so you take it.
So both, and you know, and I think an opportunity is to take what they're trying to do in the school day and intentionally connect it. So what Emanuel's saying, not only that they're doing this cool project,
Right.
but that it's connected to the Common Core state standards for science, and we know we need to work with our students on science.
Yes.
Now we no longer are limited to this 60-minute block or whatever it is, but now we have this 8-hour Saturday and everything else.
Right.
So that potential connection, wonderful opportunity. It can be a challenge to get to get the school to think. You know, there's so many demands on the school to think.
Right.
So you need those good partners. You need that funding to have somebody who's saying, okay, what about the outside the school day time? You need principals who really are looking at, my school is actually open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and there's all kinds of things happening. And you need partners that are able to collaborate. Collaboration is a challenge, and it's something that we're trying to support programs and communities in doing better. We all know that collaboration is good. And you got to start with communication, and then you can get up to cooperation, sharing space, a classroom space, if the kids are in the classroom or if they're in the lab and the teacher needs to do something else. How do you share that space and those supplies? So communication, cooperation, and then we can get to collaboration, which is really creating something new and different. And that is hard to do. And how to partner well, to find the right partners and the right relationships. So vision, collaborating, and funding. Funding is, in Vermont, our local towns are very supportive of the after-school programs. That's across the board. When budgets come up, we have programs that are receiving funding because the communities know how important they are. We are able to sustain our 21st Century Community Learning Centers when those grant funds decrease over time. But we're concerned about federal funding.
I was just going to ask you about the federal funding with the
There-
sequestration.
With sequestration, with competing priorities in Washington, with Congress looking at reauthorization of bills for funding, we're very concerned about that. The 21st Century Community Learning Centers Fund is the only designated federal funding for after school, and it's still underfunded. We know in Vermont we have about 20 to 30,000 students that are participating. There was a survey a couple years ago that gave us the number that if there were funding and more programs, we would have another 30,000 students that who
So
are not
right now,
accessing
when you're
programs.
saying we have about 30,000 students participating in after-school or summer
Yes, well,
programs, that still leaves
30,000
Yes.
who said they would
Yeah.
if it were there
good.
and if the funding were
Right.
there. So we're halfway there.
Yeah, because when I hear Ginny say that 80% of the kids in Worcester are participating in the after-school program, not only is it good for kids, but it also provides parents with a safe, positive after-school experience for their kids, especially if they're working till 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. So think about how many children out there are not having those relationships, which I think you meant talking about relationship building after school, and how can we encourage all communities to look at this. And I think, Ginny, one of the things that what you're doing here, what you're doing, Emanuel, the support that you provide, I don't hear much about it in
No.
the media, in the school board meetings. I don't hear about it in the community. how do we, I mean, that's another area of getting the word out that we're doing
Yeah.
these wonderful after-school activities.
We're so busy, we don't have time for a lot of self-promotion, but I agree with you. And I would say of the things that Holly was mentioning, the one that's most important to me is the funding issue.
The funding
You know,
issue.
as somebody right in the trenches, in order to fund our after-school programs, in order to pay the staff who do them, we have to charge. People don't have to pay money to go to school, but they
Right.
do have to pay money to go to after school.
Right.
And I know that if we didn't have to charge $7 to $12, $8 to $14 per day per kid, which is hefty.
I know.
And there are childcare subsidies.
Those get good.
There are issues with them. You have to be really, really low income in order to
So
qualify.
free and reduced lunch designation alone does not.
Not that by
No.
itself, no. They have a different threshold,
Okay.
and there's a lot of people who fall into the gap.
Mm-hmm.
So we offer reduced fees, whatever we can. I know that if after school were free, like school is free, we would be serving multitudinous more people. They would come. It's a barrier.
It's a barrier.
Paying for after school is a barrier.
Can I add a comment on the
Sure.
need? The need is just enormous, and it runs, I think, a gamut across the spectrum. But one thing that really struck me was in a visit to one project. There's a bus route that goes around at the end of the day, and so this is at 7 at night. We have folks who have been working all day long, and I think of these people as heroes. I really do. And the bus goes around, and she said in her office, she said, "Do you see those toys over there in the corner?" And I had noticed them. I was wondering, I said, "Yeah, what's with those toys anyways?" She said, "Well, this has happened 5 times this year, but the bus comes around, and in 5 occasions this year, kids have come at the end of the bus route and they have no place to go because of family problems, because of family issues." And so she has those toys to kind of take care of crying kids and kids who think they've done things wrong, and to deal with the police who have to come and deal with those issues. So there's incredible stresses out there, and these supportive people who essentially are providing all these engaging things, but also love and care for kids is priceless. So I think the need, we have to remember there's a lot of families in crisis too, and these programs are essential for everybody.
Absolutely.
But for some kids, they're lifesavers.
I think we need to kind of rethink education and childcare. If you've ever been around a bunch of moms of 4-year-olds in the August before school starts, they can't wait for their free daycare, which is sending their kids to school.
Sure, yeah.
They have much more in common than we sometimes think about it. And the school day and the school year don't align with the working parent's day and year. After school and summer programs align them, but you have to pay for part of it and you don't have to pay for the rest of it. When pre-K went into the school system so effectively, I think, there was a bump on the ADM for
Right.
kids
That's right.
on the average daily membership, which is what school
Good.
funding
Yeah.
depends on, to accommodate that. So I think that we have some work to do to look at funding after-school and summer programs. I know in the districts I work with, the only summer programs run by the school districts are for IEP kids,
yes.
on special needs kids who need year-round services.
Right.
Everybody else, either they come to our camps or they find another camp that their parents can send them to, or they work something out. But we do 8 weeks in the summer, and for many families, that's where their kids are.
Right. And one of the things, and we're getting close to the end of our 30 minutes, but when I was a high school principal and looked at the police statistics between 3 and 6,
Yep.
that's where there's a jump in
Exactly.
activity, if you will. And by providing kids with a positive place to be after school, with good role models, actively engaged in things that they're interested in, will not only reduce some of our petty things that occur in the communities, but also provide kids with a much better roadmap moving forward. And as I've said before, and you guys, thank you for reiterating, is that we really need to look at school as a much more year-round situation, where we're having schools that are open from 7 in the morning until 7 at night, where there are opportunities in the summer for children, not just children who have particular disabilities or special needs, but for all kids to have positive experiences. Not only is it going to help close the achievement gap, which
Yeah.
the achievement gap is really an economic gap.
Yep.
We know that kids who live in poverty have a harder time meeting standards, graduating from high school on time, and then continuing their education. So what you all do is integral and vital to making that happen, and I want to thank you all for what you do and for making our schools not only an 8 to 3, September to June idea, but one that is 12 months and goes much later. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So another 30 minutes have come and gone with our Join the Conversation. Thank you for tuning in this month, and I hope you learned something about all the things that folks do both in the school and out of school to support our kids. Thank you very much, and see you next month.